Okay, this is a test of a fuel pressure problem on a Chevy 454. What's happened here is I've put a fuel pressure gauge on the engine, and it's shown a decreasing fuel pressure problem over a 10-minute period. The fuel pressure drops to 0 over 10 minutes. The interesting thing to note is that there's an OEM fuel pump for this engine on the engine, and the same fuel pump was taken off the engine and replaced with the same type. So there was a fuel pump, and I thought, of course, it'd be the fuel pump. So what I've done is I've gone out into the world and come back with the same pump. So I've looked all over eBay and Amazon and everywhere, and I got a OEM recommended fuel pump, and it's the same sort. I've put this on and it's the same problem, a 10-minute fuel pressure drop to 0. As you can see, I've got clear hose here, and what I was going to do is I was mocking up for a test to see if there was any air build-up in before or after the pump and throughout the system here, and there didn't seem to be. The problem with this is that it sprung a leak, and this is just sort of like thin gauge fuel line, and I couldn't use it for the test. I put an air filter with a third outlet on the back running back to the tank. I think the thing about this is good for fuel flow and fuel cooling. Of course, the fuel pressure did drop a little bit because it's letting some out, and it's got a small hole here, and this runs back to the tank. These tests are on the fuel pressure problem playlist, so they're on private, but because they're on a playlist, they'll show up on that playlist. But of course, this video is public. One thing that's interesting to note is this steel fuel line has a kink in it. Might be able to see there, like in the middle of the video. And this fuel line runs up behind the alternator here. So that could be a possible cause, but unfortunately I've got to get on with it and install the new fuel pump. Yeah, but as I say, I was going to do separate fuel pump tests for this and the filter, but yeah, no, it's time to move on now. That's the new fuel filter. It's Edelbrock 1722. I've got test fuel line. It's sold as clear fuel line. It's 3/8, but it's very thin. That's been clocked, so the positions of the inlet and the outlet have been changed from stock. There's a separate couple of videos I've got out on the clocking of this. With this, the problems were that's got thread, but these didn't. So every second hole didn't have thread. So I've gone out and got an Allen head top and a nut, and just gone right through. This arm here has to be held down toward the body of the fuel pump when tightening up the screws. Otherwise, the diaphragm apparently won't work. So I got a vise. I put this in a spark plug socket in the vise, and just pushed it down, held it down while tightening up. But what you could do is you could get a strap over here and just permanently tighten it down keep it in place. So that is to say, that's the vise there. You've got your fuel pump in the spark plug socket, and you could sort of drop a board down here, and you could use a small ratchet strap to tighten it down, keep it in place. if this fuel pump works, that means that all of these OEM fuel pumps are faulty. So that's a fairly big one, yeah. If this works, if it holds pressure over a 10-minute period or more, all of these fuel pumps are faulty. Okay, I'll remove the stock standard fuel pump. I'm just going to undo the 2 bolts on either side, one there and one on the other side of this, and that'll come straight off after undoing the hoses. When putting it on, there's a push rod, and the trick is to get the push rod to stay up in there while you put it on. Okay, that was the first one. This is one that's just come off the truck, and it looks like it's the push rod hits it just there on the tip. The push rod is still in place, so it hasn't fallen out. If it does fall out, I think you use that, you undo that bolt there, down the bottom there, and you can get a screwdriver in and hold the rod up. Okay, that's it, it's on. In degree of difficulty, it's probably an 8, maybe even a 9. Okay, so here's how I installed it. First of all, I got this off from there, and I got a screwdriver, and I pushed the push rod because it keeps falling out. Push the push rod right up, and I got the fuel pump and put the arm in front of the push rod. Once it was in place, got some metal lines under here, and I pushed a t-shirt, I packed it out, and I just gave it something to sit on, and then I was able to come around to the top here, and don't forget to put the whatever you do, don't forget to put the gasket on. And I just put the 2 nuts in, and I managed to get them started and wind them in. So now I'll just get the push rod keeper, if you can call it that, and I'll put that in and do it up. Okay, now I'll connect the fuel lines, and we'll do the fuel pressure test. Okay, well, it's all on now. I've just got to provide the hose back to the tank. That goes from that nib there. I'm happy with the strength of the hose. I'm assuming it's fuel rated. That's how it was sold, as being fuel rated. It's pretty tight. In some places, like this one here, for instance, I used grease, put some grease on the join. Also, it's a good idea to use gloves when you're using a lot of pressure to get the joins together. This is a standard join, but it's got flares on either side. It's very hard to push the hose over it. So yeah, it's all looking pretty good. I'm fairly happy with it, and should work well. I ordered 3 meters, and that's how much I've got left over.